All right. And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and my beautiful co host next to me is Laraib. And we are super excited to break down yet another excellent week of NFL football. As week 3 of the NFL is concluding, we were filming this before the Monday Night Football game, before the Giants and Cowboys square off. So we have one more game left for this week, but we're going to go ahead and start tackling some of these games from the rest of the week.
Yeah, Lewis. Why don't we get into our picks from last week and see how we did?
Yes, let's get into them.
Somebody definitely did better than the other person this week.
Right,
I'll
and it
let
was
y'all
me
guess who
again.
it is.
Yeah, so it was me again. I want to give a huge shout out, and I went on a limb. I went on a limb for a few of these. The Titans were one of my favorite picks of the week. There are too many dumb people on the Raiders. Not saying that was you, but the public, right? Fade the public. The Bears, I just had a feeling, at home, two bad teams. I told you it was just something about the Bears that I loved. And the rest of the games, Detroit failed me. I was so disappointed. God, I hate Dan Campbell sometimes, but then I love him sometimes. It's a love-hate relationship. Other games of note that went the other way. So your upset, the Cardinals lost to my Rams. My upset barely lost, but the key was my lock was the Bengals, and your lock, the Chiefs, lost, even though we both picked them. That was kind of the decider, and for some reason, you keep picking the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough to pick them moving forward. I did like how the offense showed out this week, but losing to the Falcons at home is kind of unacceptable. And then, like you're saying, just disappointing week for me. Kansas City, I don't know how they lose that game. I don't think we'll touch on that a little bit in this podcast, but not really about what's going on. The special teams was really interesting in that game for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know how Harrison Butker is missing 4 or 5 games this season, but whatever. And then Las Vegas, man, I don't know what is going on. We'll get into that just in a little bit, but yeah, what's going on, Las Vegas? Houston, bad pick by Davis Mills in the closing seconds of that game, and that's what cost them. But Lewis, you're up 3-0 on me. A lot of football left to be played, and so we'll see what I can do here in week 4.
As we shall. Before we hop into some of our hot takes, we're going to do a little Saint Seattle corner of the episode where we bring up our two favorite teams and we talk about what happened this past week. I'll start. Unfortunately, the Saints, as the road favorite, lost against the Carolina Panthers. Just anemic offense. Jameis looked lost in the first 3 quarters, and we turn it on in the second half like we always do. And it was just too little, too late, too many mistakes. And Dennis Allen was outcoached by Matt Rule. Just gonna say that.
Yeah, and then moving over to my Seahawks, it's a back and forth game. It'll shoot out down in or up there in northwest, Pacific Northwest. The Seahawks and the Falcons battling. There wasn't too much defense going on in the game, except for late when the Falcons, kind of turn up the heat in the last quarter and get 2 sacks on Geno Smith, which what really ended up costing us the game. And it's really disappointing to see us lose to the Falcons at home. And right now we have the number 3 draft pick. So we'll just see how the season goes from here.
And right now the Saints do not have a draft pick. So we'll see how the season goes from here. You're welcome, Philadelphia. But moving on, we have our favorite segment of the show. It is Cap or No Cap, where we give it to you hot takes right off the grill. And Laraib, you're going to tell me Cap? No way that's happening. No. Or No Cap. Man, that's the truth. Starting off with the Jacksonville Jaguars, debatably the biggest winners of this Sunday, as they were the biggest underdog, 7-point underdogs to the Los Angeles Chargers, and handily defeated them on the road by 28 points. Cap or no cap, this Jaguars win makes them a lock for the playoffs this year.
For the playoffs, I'm going to have to say cap for the playoffs. But what I will say no cap for is Trevor Lawrence winning most improved player of the year. Just how he's been performing this season has been outstanding in my opinion. We think about his time to throw the ball, 2.39 seconds, one of the best in the league. And we've seen him, and he only was no sacks this week against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, which is kind of impressive in my opinion. And so the offensive line with the play has been pretty solid. And then we've seen him get the ball quickly out to his receivers. And so I really like this Jaguars team moving forward. The Colts have struggled. I know they beat the Chiefs this past weekend, and the Titans also beat the Raiders. But I just really like how Trevor Lawrence is progressing, and this Jaguars team has been sneaky good. And so we'll see how the season goes on for them. But only 10 points allowed from this defense in the past 2 games, and so this team is looking pretty good, Lewis.
I will say to my original statement, no cap. I believe in this Jaguars team. I think they can make the playoffs, and they'll get there through winning their division. I think this Jacksonville team they've proven me wrong. I'll say that because I bet against them. I think every single week. My Commanders pulled through. Of course they could. But the other 2 games, it was just this defense has really shocked me, and they're improving as the weeks go on. Devin Lloyd at linebacker had a bunch of huge plays. Trayvon Walker, the number 1 pick, continues to impress. But to your point about Trevor Lawrence being the most improved player, is he improving as a player, or did the situation improve around him significantly? You bring in a legit head coach in Doug Peterson who has Super Bowl experience and experience with developing quarterbacks, which he is known for. Travis Etienne comes back from injury. He's looking good in the passing game. James Robin coming back off an Achilles, looking outstanding. Huge shout out to our fantasy teams. And then this offensive line they improved. I love what they did in the offseason. Now, yeah, they may have overpaid for a few guys, but those guys are paying off. So in the grand scheme of things, I really like what this team has been doing. I like what they're going to continue to do. And I think they can be a serious, I won't say contender yet, just because I need to see it more consistently, but dismantling this Chargers team, now be it a injured Chargers team, but a Chargers team coming off Thursday Night Football with additional rest to just utterly dismantle this Chargers team. Bravo, Jacksonville.
Yeah, they've been playing really well, and we'll see what they can do this season, Lewis. But let me ask you, the Raiders are 0-3. Cap or no cap, Josh McDaniels is the first head coach to be fired.
I'm going to say cap, but I don't feel good about it. And I know it's just been 3 games for Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas, but we told you last week, out of the 3 winless teams, the Raiders concerned us the most with how they collapsed that game against Arizona. And then they come out on the road against Tennessee, 2 winless teams. It just comes down to which team is just better prepared, better coached. And of course, Mike Vrabel has the better prepared, better coached team, as I told you in our picks. And it ultimately came down to just lack of preparation. So many miscues. Devontae Adams is still being underutilized in this offense, which Josh McDaniels is supposed to be this A1 play caller, but at the same time, he keeps making the same mistakes of just running the ball on first down, getting 2 yards. Brandon Bolden was a bright spot on this team, and then he just disappeared. I mean, the inconsistencies were killing this Raiders team, and then they have a miraculous drive down the field, and they somehow get it with like no time left to Matt Collins on 4th and goal, and 2-point conversion fails. Horrible play idea. It was just, Darren Waller, go stand in the middle of the end zone and we'll throw it up to you. That's not going to work. It's 2022, Josh McDaniels. So sorry about the little rant right there. But as we did hear following that game, Josh McDaniels had an extensive meeting with Raiders ownership. So usually those meetings aren't hey, man, how's the kids? It's a lot more serious than that. And we'll see the ramifications of that soon.
Right, for sure, Lewis. And one thing like you were mentioning, you'd like to see some more creativity out of this offense, right? You talk about all the playmakers that they brought in. You bring in Devontae Adams, give $150 million to him. Renfro's coming back, Waller's coming back. You have Josh Jacobs, and so you think about all the players that they have on the offensive side of the ball, and they really just haven't lived up to the expectation. And so we'll talk about the future a little bit, Lewis. They still have to play the Chiefs twice. They have to play the Broncos twice. You still have to play the Chargers. You have to play the Rams, and you have to play the 49ers. And so you look at the schedule going forward, it's really, really tough. And let me give you one more history lesson, Mr. Butler.
Love it.
Since 1979, only 6 teams that have gone 0-3 have gone forward to make the playoffs. And so I think you can pencil in this Raiders team for missing the playoffs this year. And I'm going to say no cap that McDaniels is the first coach fired. He brought in the pedigree from New England, but we've seen these coaches come out of New England not really have some success. Matt Patricia for one, Bill O'Brien, another one. And so these coaches that come out of New England, they might be really good while they're there, but when they're on a different team, they really haven't lived up to their expectations.
The only reason I hesitate when I say that he won't be the first coach fired is Matt Rule is so inept, and I know they won and they beat my Saints, and this might sound just salty from a Saints fan who lost, but their offense was so awful outside of a just disgusting defensive lapse on a 60-yard touchdown by Laviska Shenault. I mean, the Saints outgained them by 250 yards. That is not just insignificant. This game was just failed opportunities by the Saints. Jameis was playing awful and just bad situational football from the Saints. But when it came down to just who was the better team between the 20s, there was no doubt it was the Saints. This Panthers offense looked anemic. Baker looked awful. He didn't turn the ball over, but he looked so bad in this game, just missing open receivers constantly. And these two receivers can't even separate. So it's just the worst of two worlds. Matt Rule and hiring Bob McAdoo as your offensive play caller is just head scratching. We talked about it last week. I still think Matt Rule's fired. David Tepper, he is a young owner, an aggressive owner who bought this team for a lot of money, and he wants to see results soon following a Super Bowl appearance. Just 7 years ago. It wasn't that long ago that the Panthers were representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. So he needs to see results soon, and that might result in a quick firing and looking for a new head coach, potentially former NFC South head coach Sean Payton.
Yeah, well, Lewis, it takes a special kind of talent to make Christian McCaffrey look bad. But go ahead.
No, really. But next up, let's focus on the positive side of things, Laraib. Lamar Jackson putting up yet another MVP-like performance on the road against New England. 4 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, over 100 yards rushing. He was playing amazing in this one and just completely took over the game. Cap or no cap, by the end of the season, Lamar Jackson will make the Ravens look silly with their initial offer and will become the highest paid quarterback ever.
I'm going to say no cap, Lewis. The Eagles are the only 3-0 team, barring the Giants winning tonight. But this Ravens team should also be one of those 3-0 caliber teams, and it's all on the back of Lamar Jackson. All right, you think about the receivers they have. They're not household names. Not many people know Rashad Bateman, and not many people know Devin Duvernay. But he's turned that into 10 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions with 750 passing yards. And then on the ground as well, in 3 games, 243 on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns. And what's really impressed me from him this season has been his passing. A lot of people have marked him. Oh yeah, Lamar Jackson RB1 for this Ravens team. But what he's come out and done in the passing game this season has been nothing short of extraordinary. And he's going to make the Ravens really regret not paying him this offseason. And he's going to continue to dominate this season with the passing game. And I know they have a lot of players banged up. Their left guard goes out. J.K. Dobbins really didn't look like himself in his first game back. And so it's a lot of pressure on him to lead this team, and he's been doing it, Lewis.
The NFL market is at an all-time high now, and it continues to rise, and so does the salary cap. So if I'm a Ravens general manager, front office member, and I'm looking at this saying, well, right now Lamar's value it's not great, so we can get him at somewhat of a discount as the salary cap is just going to skyrocket in the next few years with this new media deal coming in. So Lamar at the time, he wanted $250 million and $185 guaranteed, which at this point looks laughable. If I'm being honest to you, Laura, if it's at the end of week 17 and we're sitting here, this might sound crazy. I'm not going to be shocked if Lamar inks a $300 million fully guaranteed deal. It would not shock me at all. And I hope he gets every penny because he is playing out of his mind. He's thrown for 3 touchdowns and rushed for 100 yards. That's only ever happened 4 other times in NFL history. You know what one of those other times was? Last week when he did it against the Dolphins. I mean, he is playing historic football right now, but it's the biggest thing. If he gets hurt, I know he's been playing safe. He slid a lot in that game, and I have faith in him that he can stay healthy this season. By the way, he's been passing the ball, looking stoic in the pocket, but it's just a lot of those rushes. You're really crossing your fingers because I think all of America is rooting for Lamar Jackson because we know he's getting screwed over by the Ravens and we want him to get his money that he deserves. And at this point, just stay healthy, Lamar. If you stay on this path and you stay healthy, forget getting paid the most in the league. How about Super Bowl MVP? That's how good he's been playing, Laraib.
Yeah, really, really great play out of him. We really hope he gets his big contract. And like you're saying, it wouldn't surprise us if he got 300 million guaranteed. And it, like you're saying, it really didn't make sense for this Ravens team looking in the offseason to not pay him, because what else were you going to do at quarterback, right?
Exactly. What, he's going to get rid of Lamar? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
He's your franchise.
And you think about it, even if he does get injured, you're not going to trade him or drop him, right? You still have to sign him. And so the worst thing that could happen to you is that he's doing what he's doing right now, playing at an MVP caliber level, and you have to pay him more than you would have paid him during the offseason. So really head scratching by the Ravens there.
Yeah, and if you're worried about potential injuries, you're about to pay so much guaranteed money that if he gets injured next season, now you look like even more of a fool. And like you were saying, he's doing this with really insignificant weapons, because you didn't bring up that running game has been not even existent. J.K. Dobbins came back. He looked good in his debut, but Lamar has been their running game, passing game. He's been blocking on the running game. I mean, what else can he do for this team in this offense? It's just atrocious what they're doing to him. If I'm the Ravens, I'm Steve Buscemi, or not Steve Biscotti, excuse me, the Ravens owner. I am paying him today and not thinking about it
at this moment. All right, Lewis, but let me ask you another cap or no cap. Your Eagles are the best team in the NFC.
My Eagles, the only unbeaten team, well, the only 3-0 team in the NFC. Filming this before the Giants beat the Cowboys. So by the time you're hearing this, they will be tied with the Giants at 3-0. I know that's not my pick.
That's not what your pick says.
But a lot of things have changed my mind, including Ezekiel Elliott, that I really need. I need a Giants win here. Now, it might not change anything, but never mind. The Eagles have been the most impressive team in the NFC, and Jalen Hurts, I think we're seeing an ascension. This is reminding me, Laraib, and you might disagree with this as a Seahawks fan, but this was reminding me of 2015 Russell Wilson after 2 years of, it's the defense, it's the running game. He doesn't really look that impressive. It's the head coach, it's the system. This is where he's showing an elite talent, just hard worker. He's put the work in, and his arm has looked very impressive so far this season. He is connecting on deep balls after deep balls, and those two receivers they have, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, are paying off in huge dividends. You give up 2 first-round picks. Well, you choose Devontae Smith, a first-rounder, and then you trade a first-round pick for A.J. Brown, and it just transforms the offense. They look so dynamic. So I can't speak enough about this offense. And the defense, 9 sacks against Carson Wentz last week.
Your boy, Carson Wentz.
Really only allowing 6 points that game because they gave up a safety on the other end. So it was really pretty much a shutout until a garbage time touchdown by a great offense in the Commanders. So it's just week 3. It's just week 3. Don't overreact. But this Eagles team has an identity. They know what they're trying to do, and their defense is improving week by week by week. Now, they're going to be tested by better quarterbacks in this season, but the rest of the season is so easy for them. So to say that they're going to finish as the number 1 seed in the NFC and then just have to play 2 home games to go to the Super Bowl, I like their odds this season, praying for health.
Yeah, and what we thought going to the season was, it's going to be a power run team, right? You have big number Jason Kelsey up there. He's going to be leading the way. You talk about the running backs in Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott, and a rushing quarterback. We thought Jalen Hurts would be. When you think, okay, we're going to be power run, we're going to dominate, control the clock, and what we've seen out of Jalen Hurts is the same thing we've seen out of Lamar Jackson. Somebody who really perfected his craft over the offseason after that embarrassing loss against Tampa Bay last year in the playoffs. And now you're seeing, these 2 stud wideouts who've really changed the outlook of this team going forward. There's a lot of questions after that Buccaneers game last playoffs. Is Jalen Hurts the guy in Philadelphia? And he really took that to heart this offseason. And so to watch him improve, and then like you're saying, the schedule is going to be really, really easy for them going forward, especially in that weak division with those bad quarterbacks. So I really like them to win the NFC and not to be the best team in the NFC. You have to beat guys like Brady. You have to beat guys like Rodgers. So we're going to see if Jalen Hurts is going to be on that level in the playoffs. But moving forward, if you can just continue the same success, deep bombs, and those wide receivers really help them out a whole bunch. Because you think about how they can stretch the field and they can still play the intermediate route and still play the flat route. And so they really dominate in all three levels of the field. And then that run game, it just puts it all together for them. And so I agree with you. The Eagles will have the best record in the NFC, but they still have a lot to prove.
I want to ask you a question. I'm going to go kind of off script here, but I've been thinking about this for a while. When we were growing up watching football, the biggest thing was always, if you're a Super Bowl team, you had to have the best wide receiver, a good head coach, and a really good defense. Did I say wide receiver? I meant quarterback. But in today's NFL, the value of the wide receiver, and back in the day, it was like, oh, Julio Jones is cool, Antonio Brown is cool, but they don't win you games. Games are won by a good running game and a good defense and a good game managing quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. But in today's day and age, after we just saw Cooper Kupp win Super Bowl MVP, is the receiver now the most important position on the football field outside of the quarterback? Because I'm starting to lean that way. As we've seen, so many offenses are getting transformed. Look at the Dolphins, trade for Tyreek Hill, 3-0. Look at the Eagles, as we just mentioned. Now, it's not working out for the Raiders, but maybe Devontae Adams isn't that good outside of Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. But you see all these teams investing so much capital into these highly touted receivers, and it's paying off big time. Thoughts?
Oh no, I definitely have to agree with you. We've seen the NFL head in this direction for some years now because Lewis, we're in a passing league, right?
Yeah.
The quarterbacks they're going deep, and the running backs we've seen, we have these generational talents come out, right? We have the Saquon Barkley's come out. We have the Naji
Taylor,
Harris.
Henry.
Yeah, we have all these guys come out, right? But you can get them for a dime a dozen, right? And for the most part, outside of these generational guys, you can put anybody back there to put their hands on the ball like this and take it wide open between the tackles or take it outside. What it really takes is some of these wide receiver guys who are able to exploit defenses deep down the field, intermediate. It's those guys who are really the game breakers, Lewis.
And if you think about it, in the past, when you're like, oh, receivers really weren't dominating, that's because tight ends were. Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham, these great tight ends, they were kind of transcending the game. And now you're getting these just athletic freaks at receiver, and they are just mismatched nightmares all across the board in every matchup. And running backs, you talk about the best running backs in the league. Who's your top five? Name them. I don't care. They're not winning games. The teams that are winning games, let's see, last year, the Darrell Henderson won a Super Bowl. What about 2 years ago? Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette.
Right. Damian Williams for the Chiefs.
Right. So it's a lot of, you don't need household names to running back, but Tyreek Hill wins you a Super Bowl. Mike Evans wins you a Super Bowl. Cooper Kupp wins you a Super Bowl. We're seeing a trend
Doug
here.
Baldwin wins you a Super Bowl.
Outside threats. Moving on. Doug Baldwin, heavily underrated. One of my favorite Seahawks of all time. But I want to go back to our cap or no cap section. That's just something I've been thinking about, and we're going to prove the theory this year when my boy Jahan Dotson wins the Super Bowl. But going back to your stomping grounds, Laraib, in the NFC West, there's been somewhat of a shakeup as your pick to win the division last week was the San Francisco 49ers. However, a disappointing showing after they blew a 5-point lead on the road to Denver, who really looked shaky in that game as well. Did this Sunday night football game change your opinion on the 49ers' chances in winning this division?
No, Lewis. I still think that the Niners can win the division. Let's go back to the offseason, Lewis. A lot of people think Jimmy Garoppolo is no longer going to be on this team, but he doesn't end up being traded. He's still there. And what do? They stick him in the janitor's closet. He's not learning any plays. He's not watching any film. He's not working with the offense. He's just in the background, on his phone. Okay. And then they sign him. We'll keep you on as a backup, but still, Trey Lance, he's getting all the attention. And so Jimmy Garoppolo, he's been incorporated into this offense, but sitting out for a whole offseason, not getting any reps with anybody. This was George Kittle's first game back. And so, it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get adjusted, especially in his first game back when he didn't even expect to be, on this team during the offseason. And so, I'm not really too worried. And then this Broncos defense, I think, is really, really underrated, Lewis. They've been balling out this season, and they showed that they can stop the run for sure against this 49ers team, and they might be the success for the Broncos. But going back to the 49ers, I just really like this team from head to toe. One of the best rosters. I think Kyle Shanahan, he can figure it out for this team. And for the Rams, they play the Cardinals this weekend. Cardinals showed they're absolute dumpster fire. Cliff Kingsbury, also another one of those guys. So one of the head coaches gone. And then for this Rams team, to only put up 20 points on this Cardinals sorry D, a little interesting.
I'll get to the Rams in a second, but something that me and Laraib have picked up in the last few years of watching sports, NBA, NFL, cricket, we've noticed a trend with a specific injury that doesn't get talked enough about as a devastating injury. Laraib, what is it?
High ankle sprain.
Trent Williams, probably the best player at any position in the NFL. The gap between Trent Williams and Teron Armstead, Bakhtiari, any other tackle in the NFL is as large as any gap between 1 and 2 in any position in the NFL. Yes, Aaron Donald included. And he suffered a high ankle sprain against the Broncos last night. Now, why is this so significant? Well, when he went out, their offense looked anemic. They did not score another point after Trent Williams left that game. And high ankle sprain. Well, what's the big deal? It's an ankle sprain. I've sprained my ankle. He sprained his ankle. This is the biggest deal. Laura, a high ankle sprain is the next ACL Achilles, in my opinion. Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, NBA, Lonzo Ball. How many athletes has it just been, high ankle sprain, back in 6 weeks? Well, they'll be reevaluated. 6 weeks later, things aren't really trending in the right direction. 6 more weeks, and it ends up them missing 2 years of football. I've seen it. You've seen it. And the public needs to start seeing. And this is a huge deal for this 49ers team because their backup, I don't even remember what his name was, but he was getting cooked by Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory, and they just could not block the 2 edges. And that's not going to get any easier. It's not like the Rams have slouches on the edge. They still have Aaron Donald. So my opinion has changed a bit, Laraib. And I know what you said about the Rams. They didn't look that impressive, but it's a road divisional game, and we know these games can go super haywire, super unpredictable. And someone picked the Cardinals to win that game. I'm not going to say who.
I had to pick an upset. I just couldn't.
You could have picked the Dolphins, but you got cold feet. But we're not going to talk about that. And so, say what you will. The Rams, they won a divisional game. They needed it, and they're starting to trend in the right direction. Cam Akers getting back on the field, getting reps. Allen Robinson getting some more reps. They're starting to get this offense gelling as Matt Stafford gets more comfortable. They're going to figure it out. I like the Rams now to win this division.
Yeah, and going back to the high ankle sprain, Lewis, Naji Harris had a high ankle sprain last season, which held him out for some time. But he also had a high ankle sprain this season, Lewis, after the game in week 2. And he came back week 3 just fine from that one. And so it's going to depend on the severity of this.
Just fine?
He played the whole game. He played the whole game. So that's all I need from him. And so, Trent Williams left it. Well, this is definitely something to look at because their offensive line is abysmal without him. And so we'll just see how far this injury takes, what the recovery time for it will be. And that might also sway my decision going forward. Okay, but I think that will wrap up our review for week 3, unless you have something else to say, Lewis.
I wanted to kind of hit on this this Bills-Dolphins game, Laraib. I think it was one of the biggest games of the weekend. And I understand not picking it, the Dolphins. You're getting cold feet. And getting cold feet now, not wanting to discuss it. But I want to ask you, Laraib, as the Dolphins win, they're the only unbeaten team in the AFC, and they beat the division favorites and the Buffalo Bills. Is it crazy, cap or no cap, the Dolphins can win this division?
Well, anybody can do anything, but this Dolphins team will.
The Jets are not winning that division.
The Dolphins will not win their division. All right, Lewis, let me just tell you a couple of things that happened in this game, all right? on-field temperatures of over 100 degrees.
Woo.
Bills secondary, key players out everywhere.
Yep.
Players dropping important passes. Josh Allen not being able to get the snap under center and spike the ball in time for the field goal. Stephon Diggs cramping up on important last, game-winning drives. And so, everything that could have went wrong for this Bills team went wrong. And their offensive coordinator definitely showed some of his emotions and all that stuff. But this Dolphins team has the weapons, it is capable of doing it. But I think for this Bills team, everything was just going wrong for them in that game. And so going forward, I think this Bills team, they can still get right back on track and win their division.
There's been an interesting stat kind of floating around on the internet, and I want to hear your opinion on this. The Bills in the last 2 seasons have lost 6 games. All of those games have been one-possession games. They have not won a single one-possession game in that stretch. So they are 0-6 in one-possession games in the last 2 seasons, including the playoffs. Does this concern you that when the Bills are rolling, they are rolling and no one can mess with them? Obviously, as we saw the last 2 weeks before this week. But is there any concern in this team's late game execution when it comes down to these close games where they're just not used to being in these type of situations? Circa like Mike Tyson when he was a boxer. Man, if you survive round 2 with him and take him the distance, chances are you can win that fight. And that's kind of how I feel about this Bills team. If they can't knock you out and put you away early, then they have some situational problems with this team.
Yeah, for sure. But when you get into situations like that, especially you talk about last season, all the 1-score games that they lost, those are just experiences for you to build onto, right? And this is just going to be another experience for them to build onto going into the season.
But they're not building onto it because they keep losing these games, and they still yet to address the lack of a run game, which puts teams away and helps you get tough first downs. That there's a lot of things that I'm not seeing progression. Yes, when they're rolling, they're rolling. But where is the progression? What am I supposed to believe in these tight games?
Well, you got to look to the head coach Sean McDermott and some of their game planning. He's one of the coming into the league. I think you and I both really liked him and what he was doing in Buffalo. And now to see them as Super Bowl favorites, I think he's really gonna have to hammer down, what this offense is gonna be like and their play calling and their situational awareness, right? And you're absolutely correct in saying stuff like, 1-score games are a big deal for them. Because you think about the time management from the playoffs last year and how, the defense just messes it up for them, and they're just a couple plays going from the AFC Championship game, right? And so it's just going to be learning these mistakes, and if they're not going to learn from them on these close games, then they're just not going to learn from them and they're going to lose. But it's going to take somebody to lock in, for the team to buy in. We gotta execute in these high pressure situations, and if they can't, Lewis, they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. In terms of this specific matchup, I think the Bills are the better team. They showed it. They outgained the Dolphins. It just came down to some crazy things in the end, but you have to capitalize. And it's hard for me to pick this Bills team in games that I know are going to be close against some of the favorites in the AFC when they've shown time and time they lack fundamental things that win you close football games, including a running game, including top offensive line play, which I have not seen in these last 2 seasons that they need to improve.
Yeah, and you think back to my Seahawks when Russell Wilson was pretty good in the past couple seasons. We would always have those crazy primetime game finishes, right? Against teams that we shouldn't have beaten, against games that we shouldn't have won. And sometimes it just takes that X factor. Russell Wilson putting on his magician's hat and just going out and doing it, right? Just executing in those high pressure moments. And if Josh Allen doesn't have that it factor, that X factor, because they're on the goal line, right? And Isaiah McKenzie is wide open. Front corner of the end zone. You just got to stand tall, Josh, and drill it to him. And you know what it does? He puts it on his feet and it bounces off the ground, and that's it, right? And so, in those moments, it just takes somebody to be calm and collected. And Josh, we'll see if he has that this season.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there about Russell Wilson. It kind of makes me think maybe there's something to the Pete Carroll strategy. I'm not saying it was perfect because obviously it wasn't, but you run the ball, you play conservative early, and therefore, when it comes down to crunch time, you still have all your best punches left in the passing game and the trick plays to where if it comes down to a close game, tit for tat, then you can make the plays late. You still have all your best punches. But I feel like in a lot of these games, Buffalo knows they have the best roster, even against some of the better teams. So they throw their best punch out. And if you can eat that best punch and continue to go back, what else does Buffalo have? Because you can kind of solve them from there. So maybe a difference in the offensive strategy of being more conservative early, relying on the running game. I really liked how they used Devin Singletary in the passing game this week. Maybe getting some of the other guys more involved, some screen games, short passes, just less stress on Josh Allen. And then later in the game, you can rely on some of these game-breaking Josh Allen plays, and you can find more success. But that was a rant from us right there. And we are now going to, that will conclude Cap or No Cap, getting to all of our topics today. And now we will transition into the Thursday night football game, a very exciting one this week, Laraib. We have the Miami Dolphins traveling to Cincinnati to face the Bengals. The Bengals are 3.5-point favorites against the undefeated Dolphins
at
home.
The Bengals are -3.5.
Yeah, they're the favorites.
You said the Dolphins.
Oh, excuse me. The Bengals are 3.5-point favorites at home against the Dolphins. The undefeated Dolphins. Rob, the difference in this game being how big of a deal is it that the Dolphins have not lost yet?
Well, realistically, Lewis, this Dolphins team could easily be 1-2 instead of 3-0, right? You think about to the Ravens game, they come back miraculously and win that game, right? You think about last week, that game, they certainly should have lost that game if Josh Allen can handle the snap before halftime and they can kick 3, or if he can, deliver that pass to Isaiah McKenzie in the end zone and they score that touchdown. So for this Dolphins team, I think what I'm really interested to see, Lewis, is going to be the Cincinnati secondary against those Dolphins wide receivers. You think about who the Cincinnati defense has played so far. They've played the Browns. Oh, no, excuse me. They played the Steelers, the Cowboys, and the Jets, right? Nobody who's really game-breaking. But you talk about game-breaking, it's these Dolphins wide receivers who can extend the field. And so I think that's going to be the key to the game in this one for the Bengals if they want to come out on top. I was really, really disappointed in this Bengals rushing attack last week. We're playing against a Jets team who really isn't that good, and I thought Joe Mixon would go off in this game. And he really hasn't shown that this season. And so I think that's also going to be a key for the Bengals in this one. It's not even in this game, but moving on towards the season. You really want to get your run game going, right? Look at the Bills. And so getting that going is going to be a key for them. Joe Burrow only sacked 2 times last week, so solid, instead of the 9 that he did a couple weeks ago. And so I like the Bengals in this one, Lewis. I think Joe Burrow can get it done at home against a Dolphins team who frauds potentially.
Potentially. Oh man, of course you went with the Bengals.
I mean, that's what you get for giving it to me first.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So I will be doing the pivot of the century. Here's why. The Bengals are wearing white, and it is one of the most hyped up jersey reveals of the entire year. They're wearing the white on black stripe helmets. The coolest concept designs people have been throwing out for years. They finally made it happen with the NFL's new helmet rule. So I'm super excited to see just the drip. But the underrated thing about this game is Tyreek Hill's revenge game from the AFC Championship last year, where he gets to face Eli Apple again, who it's not really the matchups because they're both really two good players, and whenever they put on a matchup, it's a show. No, Eli Apple's not a good NFL player, but Tyreek Hill is now motivated with this offense, and I think this Dolphins team, there's no reason not to believe in them. They've beaten the Bills, they've beaten the Ravens, they beat the Patriots. I think they've been tested. They find ways to win. And I trust in Mike McDaniels. And honestly, a lot of what I've seen from Zach Taylor has been pretty discouraging this season so far. Their pass rush, I really like how they bring blitzes, their exotic packages. And you know what, Laraib? I don't like to do this. You like to do it a lot of times, and this loses you weeks. But not only do I pick the Dolphins, but because it's a 3.5 point line, they're my upset of the week, baby.
Ooh.
Lock it in. I have the Dolphins winning this game 31 to Bengals 21.
Whoa, okay. I'm gonna go the other way.
Dang.
Of course, I said I was gonna take the Bengals. And one thing to note is the Dolphins, they're playing these really high stress games these past 2 weeks, right? You think about emotions, something you've said a lot about this season.
Battle tested.
But emotional games against against the Ravens, amazing comeback, and holding on against the Bills. So those are really high taxing games on your psyche, especially when you have to claw back and you have to dig deep. That really wears and tears you down. Meanwhile, the Bengals were cruising against the Jets last week, and so expect them to be a little bit more calm and cool and collected, especially at home. So I'm going to take the Bengals. This is going to be a fun, finally a good Thursday night game, a nice fun game. I'm going to take the Bengals. Give me them 28-24.
All right, so that's going to do it for today's episode. A lot of fun banter. It was a great week of football, and we are looking forward to another great week of football as we will do our predictions on Thursday's episode. So do not miss that. Just want to another quick shout out. All of our socials are going to be in the links below. Check us out on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We are all there where you can see information about new episodes coming out, potential new information. Anything you need will be on our socials. Anything else you want to say before we head out, Laraib?
No, I think that's all good. Just another 2 historic plays this past weekend. We had another quarterback step out of the back of the end zone, which is always awesome. And of course, adding to the butt fumble, and then we have the butt kick, which is also another one for the history books. But besides that, this is the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.